Did you really think the Acolyte was over? Well, think again. Hey, I'm Father Roderick, I'm a priest and I'm a geek, and I'm here to tell you everything about the deeper layers of the stories that you love. So, let me set the scene. In July, I was in London at the London Film and Comic Con. Lots of cosplayers, great vibe, and after bumping into a lot of fellow Star Wars fans dressed as Han Solo, Stormtroopers, Princess Leia, the Rebel pilots, everything you expect, I bump into this one Star Wars fan who has the most exciting costume. He is completely dressed up as Qimir, but not Qimir the way we encounter him in the beginning of the Acolyte, but Qimir in his mask with dark robes and a red lightsaber. Now, you may think, well, yeah, why is that so special? You have to keep in mind that that was barely 3 weeks after the release of episode 3 in The Acolyte, where we first got to see this new Darth Teeth, or whatever his name is, this new villain who is absolutely one of the most vicious, most aggressive villains that we've seen on screen in the Star Wars franchise so far. And so I ask him, can I please take your picture? And then we get into a conversation, and he tells me, like, the moment he saw Darth Qimir, we'll just call him Darth Qimir, on the screen, he's like, oh my goodness, I really need to have a costume. But where are you going to get that? There isn't even any merchandise. The series has just started. Nobody knows how to make a Darth Qimir costume. And so he searches all over the place, finds this one guy who says, well, I think I can make a 3D print, like a printed version of the mask. I'm going to send it to you as soon as I can, but you'll have to do all the painting yourself because I basically just designed this on my computer. So he gets the mask. I think literally like 2 days before the beginning of the London Film and Comic Con. I think he's been working non-stop 24 hours a day on painting the mask, adding all the details, and then creating these robes. He already had a red lightsaber. It wasn't the first time that he dressed up as someone of the dark side. And that's how I met him. And what I loved about this was it was the promise of what's to come. Because obviously, the series, The Acolyte, whatever you think of it, but it did open, at least visually, a whole new era for Star Wars cosplayers. It introduces us into the High Republic and both the dark side dudes as well as the light side people, or at least kind of we don't even know the Jedi are that much into the light side at that time of history, but at least we get to see all these new costumes, new robes. And I was really hopeful that if Disney would continue this story, it would flesh out even more. And next to the original trilogy cosplayers, the much rarer sequel trilogy cosplayers, we would get to see, like, I don't know, more almost historical costumes in the Star Wars cosplay scene. But we all know what happened. The news broke that Disney has canceled the show. And at first it was just a rumor, but now actors are actually also reacting to the news. And it looks as if this is the end. And that is, maybe for many people, that is a relief because they didn't like The Acolyte. But you have to keep in mind there are also lots and lots of Star Wars fans. I'm one of them who really liked the series, and especially the promise of that series that it would expand the Star Wars storytelling universe beyond the Skywalker era. A lot of what Disney does with Star Wars is very safe, and for a good reason. There are a lot of people that just grew up with that era, but it's just like our own history. It gets so much more interesting if you add stories of what happened before, which will then give you a new appreciation of the stories that you already know. This is what George Lucas did so well when he created the prequels. I am so old that I actually saw the original trilogy in the movie theater. And many years we were completely devoid of Star Wars. There was no future for Star Wars. And then the first expanded universe novels came out, and it was like, whoa, wait a minute. Wait, we get to hear about Mara Jade and Han Solo's kids, and oh my gosh, it was so exciting. And then at one point, we heard that George Lucas was actually working on new Star Wars movies. At first, it's like, are these going to be sequels? No, they were going to be prequels. And that is how George Lucas started to fill in all the blanks, kind of show us what happened before the events in A New Hope. And it gave me a totally new appreciation of the storytelling quality of the original trilogy. And in a way, Lucasfilm and Disney has been doing that for quite a while now. They've been adding stories and new layers to show us what happened in between movies, what led up to the sequel trilogy, and lots of kind of throwaway lines in the existing movies were then taken again and with a lot of creativity created a new tapestry of backstory. Even in the novels, one example that comes to mind is the backstory of R2-D2. You see him in his first encounter with Luke Skywalker. Well, there is this incredible compilation of stories where we get to hear, one of those stories tells the backstory of what happened in the Jawa crawler, and it gives you a totally new appreciation of that scene. And so this is repeated, I think, with many of the television series, where we see Obi-Wan after the prequels, but still not revealing himself to Luke Skywalker, but watching from a distance. That's one of the things that I love so much about the Obi-Wan Kenobi television series. We've seen it with Solo, which also was a prequel and was received with a lot of enthusiasm and also with some criticism, because why would you recast such iconic roles? But face it, it was a good movie and it's still super entertaining. The one thing that sometimes unfortunately happens, and it happened with Solo, is that they set up a lot of story threads hoping that the movie will do so well that they can do a sequel and maybe even a whole trilogy based on Han Solo and Lando Calrissian's characters. But it never came to fruition because the movie didn't do as well as they hoped. But then we are left with that ultimate reveal of Darth Maul, and we're like, holy cow, what is Darth Maul doing here? And what will happen to Qi'ra? And for quite a while, I was so depressed that we would never see what would happen after the events in the Solo movie. I had that same, moment of anxiety when I heard the news that the Acolyte had been cancelled, because there were so many cool elements that I wanted to know what that would lead into. What happens to Mae and Osha? How are they going to find each other again if one of them has lost her memory? Is Osha now really lost to the dark side? What about Qimir? Where does he come from? How did he turn? What's the backstory? And especially, where is this going to lead? He was so incredibly cool. I want to see more of him. And then, of course, we had this reveal, very much like the reveal of Darth Maul at the end of the Solo movie. We get to see someone who might actually be Darth Plagueis. And oh my goodness, when I saw that shot, I was like, oh, please give us more. You cannot leave us with this. And then came the news of the cancellation. And like with Solo, I was distraught. I was like, come on, don't do this to us. We love these stories too much. And then I had to sit and all of a sudden it dawned on me, this is not the end. This is not the end of the Acolyte stories. One of the most awesome aspects of the Star Wars franchise is its diversity. I'm not talking just about the actors, but the diversity in the forms of storytelling. Think of it. From the first movie, we've had lots of comics. I was reading comics even in between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, just to fill in some of the blanks. None of that is canon anymore. But then later on, after Lucas was done with the original trilogy, We had the expanded universe. We had all these novels that gave us so many more stories and also a lot of answers. What happens next? That too, no longer canon. Then came the sequels. Then came a whole bunch of new novels that expanded before and after the sequels, all these things that we had seen in the movies. We had comics. And this is one of the things that I loved about what they did with the Solo story. We actually do know what happened after the end of Solo. We do know what happened to Kira. We do know why Darth Maul was even there and how he was involved in all this, because they continue to tell that story in the form of comics and in the form of novels. And you know what? That is how we will know who that dark figure is in the cave. If it's really Darth Plagueis, this is how we will get to know what will happen to Osha, what will happen to Mae. We will know what the impact will be of what the Jedi have done in the Acolyte to the whole Jedi Order. How this may actually be one of those first moments where you see things start to crumble. The whole political backdrop, which was barely touched upon in this series. Novels would be so perfect to expand this, maybe even better than you could do in a second season of the television series. Now, don't get me wrong, I still wish we would have seen sequel stories, maybe as a television show. One of the things that when they were talking about, hey, we might actually do a Lando Calrissian television series, I was like, yes, this is the way you can still continue that story. But that too seems to be another shelved project. But nevertheless, I'm already super happy that at least we have the comics. At least we have a bit of the story moving forward. And the news of the cancellation of the Acolyte is brand new. So obviously they haven't made any announcements. I guess everybody's still reeling from what happened. Even, just around the whole controversy about that and the very deplorable dark side of what happened to the Acolyte, the misogyny, the racism, the hatred that a lot of these actors got, and which they absolutely did not deserve. And it makes me so ashamed sometimes to be a Star Wars fan, because it's like, this is not what Star Wars is. But anyway, besides that, for the sake of Star Wars itself, I am excited that we undoubtedly will get to see how this story will continue. And maybe, you know what? And that's the final thing, that there's this one last thing that can make or break the future of the Acolyte and its story and what it's set up. And you know what? That's in our hands. It's whether or not there is going to be a demand for that. And one thing that I think could actually work in favor of the story of the Acolyte is that a lot of the controversy was around the television show. I don't think that a lot of the haters are going to bother reading the comics or the books. It's just too marginal for them. But for us, people who actually really like the story and want to know more about the characters, even the ones that die or get killed, I still want to know, how did they get to where they are at the beginning of the Acolyte? I'm looking forward to be able to read those stories, or to see them in comic book form, or maybe even a video game, who knows, without all the controversy, without having to defend myself day and night for the fact that I just like a story, and being attacked by people who don't think I have the right to like something. So yeah, maybe this can actually be good for the Acolyte, at least for the story, in a sense that it can continue to develop and expand without the burden of all that controversy. For Star Wars, I don't think it's a good thing that they canceled this, because regardless of what you think of the Acolyte as a show or the storytelling, but it did expand what Star Wars is. I don't think it's healthy for Star Wars to keep focusing on just that very small sliver of time. One of the things we all love about the Old Republic video games is that all of a sudden they showed us that Star Wars has a history that is just as rich as our human history, and it made Star Wars more believable as a franchise. It's like what Tolkien did. If he would have stuck with The Hobbit, Like, The Hobbit is such a success. I'm just going to write little stories around the Shire and the dwarves, and maybe Smaug had a son, and now is it like the same story over and over again? It wouldn't have been the same story, but instead he went back in time. He wrote all these other tales and set up the history that led to The Hobbit, and then expanded upon it in the Lord of the Rings books, and continued until his death to make the world in which his stories take place bigger and bigger. And I hope that Star Wars will have that same opportunity to expand the world, to expand our horizon, to take us with these creators into new aspects of the galaxy. They're doing it, but I'm thinking they could do it so much more. Just trust that we love Star Wars so much that even if Luke Skywalker doesn't show up and it's some kind of CGI recreation, we'll still love these stories. But anyway, what do you think? How would you like this story to continue? Where do you want Star Wars to go next? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, follow for more.